Hello and welcome back to the channel for another sugar crafting tutorial. This time we're starting on our Christmas festive wreath for this year, and we've got a lovely colour scheme of silver and blues. We're using holly, making some sort of mistletoe type leaves, blueberries and some floral bits. So this is part one. We're going to do all the foliage. I hope you enjoy it, and do make sure you come back and find us for part two. On your screen you can see a list of everything that we're going to make for your blue and silver festive wreath. There's a fair few bits you want to make, but that's because we want our wreath to be nice and full and sort of lush and busy. So in this video we're going to do the muppel leaves, which look a little bit like the mistletoe. We're going to make the holly, and we're going to do those lovely lush blueberries. We'll do the rest of the bits in part two. Enjoy, and let's get started. So we'll begin with the holly. So as I say, these are our new holly cutters, which if you have a set, then of course use them. You can use whatever holly cutters you've got. I quite like these because they are all four of them. Yeah, there's the two bigger sizes there as well. They're a slightly different shape to one another, so you get a bit of variation. You can always flip them when you cut them so that you get what will look like a little bit more variation, and I did play around quite a bit with the angle and position of the spikes on them so that they look nice and spiky, and I realised that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but yeah, they came out nice and spiky by design. And yeah, we're going to just work with white paste for everything and then paint it down the line, which makes it nice and easy. So holly, we will roll it out as always, nice and thin, but it doesn't need to be so thin that you're going to cause yourself a problem and create a liability. I'm just going to pop a little bit of corn flour on the back of that so we're not sticking. And I'll do one in each size because why not? So just press firmly, and you can feel it go through and give it a little wiggle. And we'll get a nice sharp cut. And then those I'll pop onto my petal pad. And because we're painting these and that, I'm just keeping it super simple. So for these, I'm just going to use my pointy end of my Dresden, so not the little rounded spoon end, the other end. And we're going to use it to make a vein down the middle. And the trick with this is just keep it, don't do it like you would a pencil where it's sticking right up. You just want to go a little bit flat so that you catch using the ridge on the underneath there. And we just do top to bottom to give it a central vein. And then I've got some 28 gauge wire, and you can do both these sizes on the 28 gauge. And we're just going to do a little twiddle for it. If you are looking to learn a bit more of making twiddles or different methods for wiring your flowers and leaves, we put a video up this week, was it? Recently. On exactly how to do that. So if you go on our YouTube channel, you'll find it. I think it's how to use a grooved board and wire your flowers and leaves, I think it's called. So yeah, different methods dependent on your preference. I still like to do it this way. So a couple of nice twiddles, and we will do them nice and long, so they're almost about as long as our leaves. And then of course we'll wet it. Pop that one on there, and this one on here. And then this next bit, so I'm just going to run a ball tool around the edge, and it's up to you whether or not you do this. It doesn't make a vast difference, and we're making so many of them, you'd be absolutely forgiven if you didn't. But what's quite nice is if you sort of follow the lines you know, go round the edges like that. So then you're accentuating the points and just kind of thinning out the edge, and that's all it needs. So then I shall pinch the base shut and just twist off any excess that I've got sitting there. I'll do the same with this one. And then to just give them a nice bit of shape, flip them over, gentle finger on the wire so that you can pull the tail up and give it a bit of a concave shape, as you can see there, and then just sort of pinch and bring the leaf forward. So can you see the shape it's made there? And then it sort of accentuates that line down there. And with that backward shape, when they are taped together, you just get a really nice bit of variation and shape to it all, and so on and so forth. It's catching the night light so nicely. It's making me smile. And then I'll just pop them in some polystyrene to dry. So again, slightly concave on there, and then from behind, just kind of pinch that forward so that you get that nice shape and accentuates that middle line. So for the muffle leaves, you know at the beginning when I said we weren't using any colours, I completely lied. We're going to use some black. My apologies, dear caller. So yes, these begin life like that, and it just gives a slightly deeper, darker tone to that antique metallic. So I'm so sorry, I completely lied there about that. And I don't have any left, so we shall mix some up quickly now. So of course I'm using our black colouring, which I do like to talk about quite a bit, simply because it is actually black. So it won't change colour on you like some blacks do, because quite often black colouring will be a very saturated version of other colours, and you'll find that as they change and develop and so on, all of a sudden you've got a very sort of blue or purple or sometimes even a greenish tone to them. So this won't do that and is specifically designed not to. I have managed to get that kind of everywhere. So let me just, there we are. And it will develop, but we can go just a little bit darker than that as well. Don't need too much, as you can see. Goodness, making a mess for a change. So yes, we will get this up onto YouTube as soon as we can, and it will stay in the group for a month. It's just that after 30 days Facebook deletes it, as we know. But yeah, we'll get it up onto YouTube for you all. Okay, so again we'll roll out thin, but not so thin we're causing ourselves a problem. Put the lid on that and put it to one side so I don't cause a problem of a different sort. Corn flour. Now we're being sticky because of course I was kneading it so much. There we go. So you can see it's not quite black, it's just a deep grey. And for this we are going to use, so the muffle cutters, we want the rounded end to be the top, not the pointed end. So yeah, the round end of them. And again, I'll do one of each size to show you. So there's the littlest one, the next one, and that larger one there. And for these, I wanted a little bit of texture on them, so I just used my veining stick. So they're not petals, they're not leaves, you know, there's something in between. I'll pop that just there, we can see. So yeah, it just gives it a little bit of texture and a little bit of something for the metallic paint. And we're just going to use the veining stick, focusing on that rounded end so we can widen it just a little. And it's just that. That is all we need. So I'll pop him on my petal pad now. So yeah, it's about giving it a bit of texture more than anything. Oh, I'm being completely butterfingered. There we are. I wonder where that saying comes from.
I imagine if you've got butter on your fingers.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was a silly question for me to have asked, wasn't it? Because yes, I imagine you're absolutely right. So we'll do little twiddles again. And like we did before, we want them pretty much the length of the leaf. It just gives them plenty of support. It means they're less likely that you're going to break them and stuff when we're pulling them around to make the wreath. Because when we get to the point of assembling it, it is definitely one of those jobs where you will wish you had an extra pair of hands. Or maybe just a third hand, perhaps not a pair, but additional hands. And then what I usually do, if I just want to make sure things are stuck down, is just use my little finger, because it's a nice smooth bit. And then, just like we did before, just give them a slightly concave shape. You can give that end a little pinch. And then for these, rather than bringing the whole thing forward like we did with the holly, just give it a little twist, because we're just after having just a little bit of shape and so on to it. Yes, Brenda, they are. Yeah, they're mistletoe-like, actually. That's very true. That is very true. So again, slightly concave shape. And give it that little twist. And there we are. Maybe twist this one the other way, because I twisted those ones like that. So berries, 28 gauge wires and a little candle, just a wee tea light. Just small, like we're petit pois sized for these really. When you're making lots of berries, a handy thing to do to get them roughly the same size. You want nice soft kneaded paste, is the first thing. And then if you roll a sausage, you can cut the sausage up. And if you've got a reasonably equal sausage and you're cutting reasonably equal segments, you're going to end up with bits the same size. It just makes it all a little bit quicker. And then to roll them into a nice even ball, it's the one time that I'll almost always use a little bit of petal base or Trex. And if you just pop a bit into your palm there, so these fingers and my palm have got it on, you can... And you're pressing quite firmly, go one way, and if you've got wrinkles in it, go the other way. And I don't know why that works. I'm sure there's some fun physics behind it. I remember Vicky telling me that, but it does. So yeah, just press quite firmly, and then those little round and round in a circle, and you will get perfect little balls without any seams or cracks or anything. And yeah, I find a little bit Trex helps. And then we will take a wire and we're going to heat it in the candle flame and then shove the wire straight into the berry whilst it's still hot, and we're looking for a little hiss and that puff of smoke. Do you see the puff of smoke?
Yes.
And that, because it's hot, it melts the sugar it goes in, and so that berry is not ever going to go anywhere. Oh yeah, you can see the smoke. Excellent. Because we're going to paint these, don't worry if you burn the wires or the paper or if anything else happens, because they're going to get transformed into those. And the only other trick for doing this, like you're not going to, you won't really hurt yourself with the burning. I mean, burns do hurt, but with this it'll be okay. So just don't, if you hold the wire too far away like this, it's really hard to aim it and get it in the middle of the berry. So just hold it about an inch down. It's not going to get so hot so quickly that it will hurt you or anything. And then it's much easier to aim and get it in. So we're just doing that with white, and yeah, about 60 of them. So we will begin with painting our holly leaves. So here I have some that I made earlier. And it's completely up to you whether you paint them, then tape them, and then go back and paint the stems, or if you wanted to tape them together and then just paint the whole thing at once. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. As I'm here, I'm just going to paint the holly leaves, I think. So we're using bright silver on the holly. I've got some Rejuvenator Spirit, which is your 98% ethanol stuff. Everclear in the States, I think that it's called. If you don't have that, you can use a white booze, so like vodka or gin or something. It's just the lower the alcohol percentage it is, the longer it will take to dry. And then we're going to put in a little bit of confectioner's glaze. So it's just liquid confectioner's glaze. I like the Squire's one, but you can get various different ones. And we just want a drop or two of that because the glaze will set the... Yeah, there we go, I can't do that at the same time and talk apparently. The glaze will set the dust so that when it dries, it doesn't all just flake off, because I think we've all done that, where you've made a paint with metallic and it goes everywhere, but as you can see, it's not coming off. So I shall take a nice wodge of dust and just give that a really good mix. You can see I have very much used and abused this paint palette over the last few days. I'm going to paint front and back. And dependent on how thick your paint is, you may need 2 coats, you may not, or you can add a little bit, put a bit more dust in. But I find that because of the rejuvenator in there, the paint will evaporate fairly quickly. So if it's too thin on my first couple of leaves, by the time I get to the 3rd and 4th ones, or indeed the 20th or 25th one, then the paint has thickened up and it's pretty perfect. And it's not a bad job, this, because it doesn't have to be too precise. And just be careful when you're doing them, because the holly's got those lovely spikes on it. Of course, the spikes really are the delicate bit, and because we made them concave. So when you're doing it on this side, just don't press too hard, because otherwise you'll find that you'll break the spike off the top, the point off the top, I should say. Because usually when we're dusting things like this, I'll hold it with a finger, but I don't particularly want to cover myself in silver paint with glaze that isn't going to want to come off again. In fact, I think there's still some on my fingers from antics earlier today. So I'm just going to pop a quick little second coat on the front of these. And you can see they just come up so lush and shiny, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so I'll chop some tape up while we let those sort of dry for a second. I was going to use white tape, and I've got some that I've just cut to like a 1/3 or 1/4 width. And for these, I've said you want little sprigs of, so let's scooch that up a bit. So this one here has got 4, there's 2 small and 2 of those larger ones. What else have we got? That's also 4, 3 small, 1 bigger one. And there's 5 on there. But you get the idea, you just want a few different variations and shapes and sizes and so on. But yeah, 3, 4 or 5 leaves. And to tape them, all we'll do is just start with one of our small ones and get that tape on. Add another off to the side and wrap the tape round. And with the holly, think I've done the same with the muffles as well, but can you see they're quite leggy, like I've left a reasonable bit of stem on them there as I'm adding them, so they're not right next to the central stem. And then of course what we can do, dependent on whether or not you have, depending on how long your wires are, we can just splint a little bit of something thicker in, just so that we've got a bit of substance down here. Because when we're attaching them to our wreath, we're going to need that whole thing to sort of come curved round, and it's much easier if you've got a decent tail to stick them onto. So let me grab, I've got some, you know what, I don't know if I've got any 24 gauge white in here, so I shall use some of this green because we're going to tape it and paint it anyway. And I don't need much, with just a little few inches just to help strengthen things. So I can add one of the larger ones, and I've got one left that will go off to the side. And of course, in terms of them being sort of 3, 4 or 5, you could stop at any point in the process of making these. You can see they're not entirely dry because I'm getting it on my fingers. And then I'll just bring that tape down. And I'm just going to add that next bit of tape to just bring it all the way down to the bottom. And then all you'll do is just spread those out so that you can just go and get those stems nice and silvery. And as I said, it's completely up to you. In fact, maybe I'll do it the other way with the muffle ones. You can paint them, tape them, then paint the stems, or you could just tape them together and then paint the whole thing all in one hit. The one thing you do want to do is just make sure, and it is a little bit awkward, so you can leave them to dry a bit first, but just make sure that you paint all the way to the end of the stem, because the stems, like I said, as these get curved round to get fitted into the wreath, these stems will kind of get incorporated into the wreathiness. And what we don't want is to end up with all these beautiful blues and silvers and then whites and greens on the end visible. So just make sure that you catch those, you paint all the way to the end, and then, I mean, these of course, they'll sit like that, but we will tweak and arrange them as we go. So that is our silver holly, and it's really pretty, and it's so silver. And I used some black tape for these, but if you don't have black, just go for something dark. We do have black tape on the website, but yeah, if you've got a brown or a dark green or something will do, if needs be. And we'll do similar. Start with one of our smallest ones and get that tape on. Add another off to the side, and again you can see I'm leaving it with a little bit of stem on the leaf itself, so it's not right close up to the central bit. Pop another one there, and then I've got that little bit of 24 gauge wire that I'll splint in. Let me just bring that down and wrap around the both of them there, and we'll add our bigger leaf. And just remember, as you're adding bigger leaves, you need to have a little bit of a bigger gap on your stem so that it has a little bit of space, like so, that they're not, because if it's too close it's just going to kind of get in the way and hide the other ones. And with these, honestly, all thumbs tonight. There we go. With these ones, much like with the holly, we're just looking for 3s, 4s, 5s. This one is 2 medium leaves and 2 of the larger leaves. That one obviously is just 3 smaller ones and 1 larger one, and I think I've got a couple in here somewhere where I've done kind of a mixture of all 3. Oh, that's the bigger one again. But you get the idea. No, maybe I don't. But there's one there with the bigger one. So we're just taping them into little clusters. And this we are painting with our antique silver. So I'm just going to shove some rejuvenator in there just to wash my brush off a little bit. But to be honest, it doesn't matter too much because it's just silver and silver. So again, some rejuvenator, and I'll add a few drops of glaze so that it sets. There we are. And I want antique silver dust, which again I'll be quite generous with mixing up. Nice, that darker gunmetal sort of shade of silver. If you do paint them all as one, of course, just spread them out so that you can. And as I say, it makes no difference which way round you do them. I think I did half and half, but I think that's because I was deciding on the colours and stuff. When you've got paints, especially with lustres, each time you go in, just make sure you mix it up again, because what happens is that the sparkly particles and the particles of colour will sort of settle to the bottom. So just give it a quick little mix when you go in with your brush. Do the back as well. And there is our silvery mistletoe. I think we can call it mistletoe because, yes, you're absolutely right that that's the sort of shape it is. Oh, I sort of broke that one, never mind. But yeah, that is those. So then last but not very least, we've got our berries. So these want painting in a couple of stages. The first step is to make them blue, and I experimented with making blueberries and then dusting them blue. I experimented with white berries that were dusted, but actually the bluest comes out from painting them. So again, rejuvenator, a couple of drops of glaze, and some of that blue dust, which looks very, very dark, but once you start painting it on, and when it dries, it's paler. And how I usually do this will be, you see I'm sort of holding the brush still and spinning the berry. And we'll colour the stem as well. So that just wants to sit in something. It's so nice, isn't it, the blue? I've become a little bit obsessed actually. And it's not a colour that, so there's very few things where one uses it with flowers. I think did the anemones in this colour. There's not a lot that are that blue, so we don't get to use it often, but it is such a lush colour. So yes, I was pleased to be able to do so. And you'll see, like, as soon as you do it, you will have a feel for if you've made your paint too thin or too thick or whatever, so that you've got the... so they don't take long to dry because it's all with the rejuvenator and stuff. So you can second coat of paint if you think they need them, but that depends entirely on the mixture you had there. So I'm just going to clean this off again a little bit, because the next step for our berries are berries that are blue, not blueberries. No. is to just layers of glaze. You want at least 2 layers of glaze on them and to make them super shiny. So once your paint has dried, we just want pure glaze. Like so. And this, at least for that, it is, you know, there's a job to be done there of painting them all, but it's not a precision paint. So again, stick something on the telly or a nice audio book or something.
How are you cleaning the brush if you have put glaze in as well?
So with Rejuvenator, so you can either use, well, glaze cleaner is one option, which is basically just Rejuvenator. So alcohol is what will cut through the glaze. So you can either use Rejuvenating Spirit or you can use hand gel. Alcohol gel works, as in hand sanitizer. There we go. In which case, what I'll do is I'll put a nice big blob in my palm and just give it a really, really good swish. If you find that you have left your brushes and they've gone solid, so like this one here, you can see is pretty solid. Just put some alcohol on it, some Rejuvenator on it, a little squirt, and leave it for a wee while, and it will soften itself straight back up. So yeah, the trick to dealing with glaze in places it shouldn't be, whether it's a brush or if you've sort of made a mistake with something, is alcohol. So and especially Rejuvenator, because it is it's 98% ethanol. So when you are like second or third coating with glaze, it's always better if you let it dry properly first, which I'm not doing quite so much just for sake of showing you, but you will end up with beautifully shiny berries. And then for those, I'll do it with white tape. We just want to make these little branches. So each branch is what? I don't know, between 2 and 3 inches worth of berries on it. You can see they're not too clustered, they're fairly spread out. And to do that, we will simply start with 1 or 2 and of course tape them together, and then bring the tape down, add another 1, 2 or 3. We can vary it and sort of end up with a nice bit of natural variation and just things that have an interesting shape and so on. So I've added 2 on there, and I'll add a third one. We can have 1 more down there. So again, I'll bring the tape all the way to the bottom. You usually, with the berries, because there's so many of them on there, you end up with enough of a stem. But if not, then just, you know, a splint in a bit of wire. And then I'll just go back to my paint, which, can you see, does it show up there? Can you see where it started to dry out in the palette? There's like a darker ring where it's dried.
Yeah, kind
It's
of.
literally just as it dries. So even if that is completely dry, put some Rejuvenator in it.
That's royal blue you're using, right?
Yes, and it will come back without a problem. So I'm going to split out all my berries so that we can come and paint that stem. And these, I would definitely paint and glaze the berries first, because I think it would just be a pain in the ass to try and paint them and get it fairly even at the same time as doing the painting the stem, like if it was all together. And you can, of course, at this point, if you decide that they're not quite shiny enough, you can put more glaze on while they're like this. I wouldn't do all my layers of glaze, but if it is just a case of going, oh, actually, I'd like them a little bit more, you can absolutely just come and whack a bit more on. But let that dry before you sort of close the berries back up, because otherwise they will just get stuck to each other. And that, my friends, let's put that in there, are how we do those lovely blueberries. And they are just so gloriously blue. So that was part 1 of our Christmas wreath for this year. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to come find us for part 2. And if you're after any of the supplies, so that's the cutters, colours, wires, tape, etc., you can find that on our website, immaculateconfections.co.uk. The link is in the description below, along with a copy of the list of the different bits that we're making for the wreath, just so that you know where you're at and what you're aiming for. We'll see you soon for part 2.